All right, let's talk about something that many of us will face, but let's be honest, nobody ever really feels ready for it. Selling a home from an estate. It's an emotional process, and yeah, it can get complicated. But having a clear roadmap can make a world of difference. So let's dive in. So you've been tasked with this huge responsibility. Maybe it was expected, maybe it wasn't. But either way, it's happening during a really tough time. And you know better than anyone, you're not just selling a house. It's not just bricks and mortar, is it? It's a legacy. It's a huge weight to carry, but you don't have to carry it alone. So to make this whole thing feel less overwhelming, we're gonna break it down into 5 clear parts. First, we'll cover the basics. What even is an estate sale? Then we'll get into those tricky legal steps. After that, we'll talk about getting the house ready for the market. Then, of course, the money, the debts and taxes. And finally, we'll touch on why having an expert in your corner can be a game changer. Okay, first things first, let's get our definitions straight. What exactly do we mean when we say an estate sale? It's actually pretty simple. When a person passes away, all of their assets, their money, their belongings, and yes, their home, become part of their legal estate. An estate sale is just the official term for the process of selling that home on behalf of the person who is gone. Now, this whole process needs a captain, someone to steer the ship. That person is called the executor, or sometimes the personal representative. They're the one who is named in the will, or if there wasn't a will, they're appointed by a court. Their job is to manage everything, pay the bills, handle the assets, and make sure everything is distributed the way it's supposed to be. Okay, let's move on to the part that I think for a lot of people feels the most intimidating, the legal stuff. You can think of this as the first major gate you have to get through before you can do anything else. So the legal journey you're about to take really depends on one huge question. Is there a will? If the answer is yes, then the will is basically your instruction manual. It tells the executor what to do. But if there's no will, well, that's when the state has to step in with its own set of rules. And that kicks off a more formal legal process. And that formal process has a name you've probably heard: probate. I know, it sounds like a big, scary legal term, but really, its whole purpose is to protect everybody involved. The court just oversees the process to make sure all the debts get paid and that everything is handed out fairly and legally, especially when there's no will to spell it all out. So for the executor, it really boils down to 2 main things. First, you've got to read that will. Does it clearly give you the power to sell the property? And second, if it doesn't, or if there's no will at all, then you have to get the court's permission. This is not optional. It's the official stamp of approval that makes the whole sale legit. Okay, so once you've cleared all the legal hurdles, phew, the focus can finally shift. We're moving away from the courthouse and right up to the front door of the home. Now it's time for the practical, hands-on work. And from this point on, things start to feel a little more like a typical home sale. You need to figure out how much the house is worth, usually with a professional appraisal. Then comes the really hard part, cleaning everything out, decluttering personal items, and fixing any little things to make sure the home shows its best side to buyers. You know, that first step of getting the price right, it is so critical. It's a real balancing act. As the executor, you have a duty to the heirs. You price it too high and the house just sits there, collecting dust. Price it too low and you haven't done your job of getting the best possible value for the family. It's a lot of pressure. So, you've found a buyer, you've agreed on a price, you are so close to the finish line. But not just yet. Before any money gets distributed, there are a couple of final financial hurdles to clear. So before the heirs get their inheritance, the executor has to use the money from the sale to settle 2 big things. First, any debts attached to the house itself, like what's left on the mortgage, that has to be paid off. Second, you have to deal with taxes. Yeah, the estate itself might owe capital gains tax on the profit from the sale. As you can probably tell by now, this whole thing is a tangled web of legal rules, financial details, and, of course, a ton of emotion. Trying to navigate all of that on your own, well, it can be completely overwhelming. And this, right here, is why bringing in a real estate agent who specializes in estate sales can be an absolute lifesaver. They do so much more than just list the property. They're your guide for nailing that perfect price, tackling the mountain of extra paperwork, and negotiating to get the best deal for the heirs. Simply put, they just get it.
And one last piece of advice, and this one is so important, whether you hire an expert or not: communicate, communicate, communicate. Keep all the heirs, all the beneficiaries in the loop every step of the way. Being transparent builds trust and can save you from so many misunderstandings and even legal problems down the road.
And really, that brings us to the final thought here. This whole process just shines a huge spotlight on how important it is to plan ahead. So the real question I want to leave you with is this: is your family prepared for this? Because having those conversations now, as tough as they might be, can make a world of difference later on. Thanks for listening.